Hello, everyone, and welcome to Self-Care 101, Part 2, the second webinar of this four-part series by the National Coalition of STD Directors. My name is Leandra Lacey, and I'm the Senior Manager of Capacity Building and Member Engagement for NCSD. For those of you who may be joining us for a webinar for the first time, NCSD is a national public health membership organization representing health department STD directors, their support staff, and community-based partners across all 50 states, and including seven large cities and 5 U.S. territories as well. We definitely want to acknowledge all of the hard work that our members do to serve their communities and promote public health. The COVID pandemic and the raised visibility of racial injustices in our country has further exacerbated feelings of stress for many people across the nation, especially given that you all are often working in environments with limited resources. So we wanted to offer this series as a way to provide tangible resources and tools around self-care and also creating team environments where self-care is a priority, all while using a trauma-informed and intersectional lens. So before we jump into things, I wanted to give some logistics and housekeeping items. All participants have been muted, so you're muted once you enter the Adobe Connect room. But if you have questions or need technical help during the webinar, please use the chat box on the right side of your screen. You can also private message me or my colleague, Tiffany Haskell. We're both listed as hosts for today's webinar. All questions for our presenter will be addressed at the end, but we will keep a queue of questions, so please send them our way via the chat box as they come up. Just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded. The recording and the presentation slides will be emailed to those that registered. If you want to take a look at the slides right now, you can also download them from the Files/Handouts box that's in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. The recording and presentation slides will also be placed on the NCSD website to share more widely. So I'll give an introduction of our presenter for this series, Robert George, who has worked for over 20 years in the field of HIV. His experience has included case management, behavioral health, and housing services, as well as prevention services, including syringe access programming. He has managed and supported programs in both urban and rural areas of Colorado. For a brief time, he worked as a consultant, providing training and capacity building to HIV case management programs across the country. Currently, Robert is the program manager for the Ryan White Part A program in Denver. He and his team are dedicated to providing high-quality support to programs providing HIV care and treatment services in the Denver area. Robert uses a trauma-informed approach in his work in order to create healthy environments for programs and providers to do their best work and effectively serve their communities. So I will hand it over to you now, Robert. Thanks so much for joining us for the second part of the series.
Yeah, thank you, Leandra. Thanks for that introduction. I'm glad to be here for part 2, and welcome everybody who's joining us. If you joined us last time, hopefully this will build on the information we talked about last time, and if this is new for you, if this is the first time you're joining us, hopefully you will also learn some things. It's not actually dependent on our last presentation. And yeah, again, this is part 2 of the Self-Care 101. We will be doing, in our third part, we'll be doing self-care and supervision, and in our fourth part, we'll be doing the self-care and intersectionality. So yeah, just again, thanks for the introduction, Leandra. I just want to say that a lot of the information that I'm sharing with you all today is based on a lot of my own study and research around trauma-informed approaches as well as self-care concepts. Most of that happened while I was doing some consulting, but also a lot of the information I'm sharing with you comes from a lot of my practical experience of working in the field of HIV and providing supervision and support to a variety of programs. As I said last time, this presentation is by no means a definite guide or answer to self-care. Presenters present on this topic differently, and I really encourage you to engage in different trainings or read different writings that folks have put together around this topic, because I think the broader perspective we can get, then the more information and tools we have to come up with our own self-care plan and process. So, and as Leandra was saying, our presentation structure today was I'll be presenting the content. If you have any questions that come up at any time, please put them in the chat at the moment that you're having them. We'll make sure to get those answered at the end of the presentation. Also, at the end of the presentation, we're going to have an opportunity to open up and just share a little bit. I love doing these trainings, but I really love doing them in person because that gives us more of an opportunity to engage and to share with each other, because I think that that's a really powerful piece of training and learning. Yeah, so just give you a little bit of information about our process. Our objective today is we're just going to take a little bit of time to describe concepts from part one, including the self-care definitions, brain science concepts, self-capacity concepts, and self-regulation concepts. We're not going to spend a lot of time there, but just reconnecting with those, I think that those are really important concepts that are really useful in our understanding of self-care, and I think it's always nice to remind ourselves through review. We're also going to talk a little bit about the process for self-care. So this is where I'm going to get into a little bit more of information sharing about how you might go about putting together an assessment for yourself and a plan for yourself around self-care. And then at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about barriers to self-care and strategies to address those barriers. So again, my favorite questions when it comes to self-care is, what does self-care mean to you? As I said before, everybody has different needs when it comes to self-care, and everybody also finds different ways in which self-care works for them. I also just like to remind us that when we're engaging in self-care, it doesn't mean that we're eliminating stressful situations, but we're creating capacity for ourselves to handle those situations in a way that feels a little better for us. I also like to ask the questions when we're considering self-care: how do you want to feel? What are your intentions? And what are your goals? And in some of my most recent reading, I've come across this idea of maybe not focusing so much on the goals, but maybe focusing on our system for reaching those goals. What are our habits to help us reach our goals? What are some of the elements that we might incorporate into our routine to help us get to where we want to go? For me, I do this daily. In the morning, one of the parts of my rituals in the morning is just to think about what's going to happen for me today, what are my responsibilities today, and how do I want to be present in those situations as I go through my day. I think sometimes I'll think about this for the week, or I think about it for the month, for things that might be coming up my way. But I think sometimes it's just helpful just to think about it and just the particular day that you're in. What is it that's going to happen today, and how do I want to be present with that? And then how do I need to take care of myself so I can support myself in that way? I wanted just to revisit our definition from last time about self-care, that self-care refers to activities and practices that we can engage in on a regular basis to reduce stress, maintain and enhance our shorter and longer-term health and well-being. And again, we'll focus a little bit on some of those activities and practices today. And we're also just going to talk about health. We're going to talk about self-care and the concept of what we need immediately for our health, and also in a longer-term way. when I think about self-care for me personally, it really is about health. It's about my physical health, it's about my mental health, and it's about my emotional health. So we're going to try some poll questions just in this review section just to see how much that we remember for last time or what we know about some of these concepts. So Leandra, if you can put up the first poll question, please. So this first question is a review from last week. So we talked about some of the aims of self-care, and so I just want to know which one of these is an aim of self-care. All right, we've gotten quite a few participants in that. So can we go ahead and broadcast the results? All right. So yeah, all of the above is the answer for that. So taking care of your health, work-life balance, reducing the impact of stress, yeah, all of those are part of them. And we can go ahead and take that poll off. Thank you. So just reviewing those aims again, so our health, stress reduction, honoring emotional and spiritual needs, whatever that means to you and however that looks for you, fostering and sustaining relationships, which we'll talk about more later, but we know that relationships helps our self-care, but we also need self-care sometimes for our relationships, for them to be healthy. And then achieving the equilibrium across your personal and your work life, making that more balanced, however that might look for you. So great. Right. So can we get the second full question just to review some of the brain response information? All right, thank you. So yeah, flight, fight, or freeze are associated with the prefrontal cortex response. Is that true or false? Right, we're getting some answers in. Let's go ahead and broadcast those results. All right, there's stuff coming in. Okay. So what we're seeing here is that majority of people said that's true. The answer actually is false. And let's go ahead and we can remove the poll question so we can see the reason why. So yeah, we have two brain responses when it comes to stress. We have the limbic brain response and the prefrontal cortex response. And in just reviewing, the limbic brain response is a response that happens when we take in information through our senses that feels dangerous to us, that we may be unsure of, we're unfamiliar with, it feels threatening, it feels dangerous, we're not quite sure what to do, and that will push our bodies into a response of fight, flight, or freeze. And so there is a release of hormones throughout our body that will get our bodies ready for our muscles ready for reaction, whether we need to fight or whether we need to run away or we need to freeze and hide in the moment. So the prefrontal cortex is the place where all of our thinking happens. So when we experience something that may feel dangerous or threatening to us or we're unsure of, but we have an understanding of that situation, we have a lot of self-capacity and self-resources, we can move our response into our prefrontal cortex where a lot of the thinking, the planning, the emotional regulation happens. So that maybe we have a different response that's not fight, flight, or freeze. So, yeah. Okay. This is something that we talked about last week, but we didn't get into very deeply, and that was burnout. And in the evaluations for last time, folks are wanting us to explore that a little bit more. And we could spend a lot of time talking about burnout, as well as some of the other concepts. And so we won't be able to spend as much time on it as I would like, but I would like to give a little attention to it, since that was something that was mentioned in the evaluation. So burnout, still in my opinion, is an individual response, and the signs and symptoms of burnout is specific to a person's experience to the situation. I think when we go back to our brain responses and how we might experience a situation that feels dangerous or threatening or stressful to us, and how our bodies or our minds respond to that, that's just going to be different for each of us based on our individual history and experiences. And I think that that's what informs burnout. But there are some symptoms that we see regularly that might be signs of burnout. And the first one is anxiety, and I want to talk a little bit about that. I hear a lot of people today talking about how anxious they're feeling, especially during this time of COVID, our social justice movement, and our current political environment. And I just want to say that feelings of anxiety is a common experience. It's very normal to have those feelings. And again, it's not an experience to overlook. And again, anxiety can look different for different people. Some people experience nervousness, restlessness, they have trouble sleeping, increased heart rate, difficulty breathing. People experience a lot of worry or GI problems. And so those are some of the physical symptoms that can start to manifest as a part of burnout and experience anxiety. And what I want to say about that is, through our self-care work, we can create some resources for ourselves and some capacity to be able to handle that differently or more in a way that feels more healthy for ourselves. But I also just want to say that sometimes when you're experiencing these things, it may be important to see a medical professional if you're having these things in a way that are really becoming disabling for you. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with needing to get medical help if you're experiencing something that feels a little bit beyond your control in the moment. And so seeing a doctor or seeing a mental health specialist might be some things that you might need to do in that particular situation if you're experiencing them. I want to talk a little bit about avoidance as a sign of burnout. And avoidance can look like just not doing your work, just going through the motions of the day, getting through what you need to do, but not really putting your full heart into it as you might usually do. You might be distracting yourself with different things. So some of the things that might feel harder to get accomplished in your work, you might be distracting yourself with some other easier things or things that might not seem to be a priority. Some people, when they're experiencing this, there's absenteeism, so they're calling in sick a lot, or they're showing up late for work, or they're avoiding conflict or challenging situations with coworkers or with clients. And I want to talk about guilt, because I think that part of burnout could be also an experience of guilt. I know that we come to this work because we feel it's important and we want to help people and we want to contribute to our communities. And we're experiencing burnout and the symptoms associated with burnout, that may make our work more difficult to do. And when we're not giving maybe our 100% that we usually give or want to give, we may feel some guilt around that. We may be feeling like we're letting our clients down or our team down, and it doesn't feel like we can turn this around very easily. And another sign or symptom of burnout could be exhaustion. This is one that absolutely I identify so strongly with. This is when I know that I'm feeling burned out. It's when I'm feeling so tired all the time. Not only physically tired, but that mental and emotional tired. And every single task seems to feel too big, and the work seems really overwhelming, and we don't know where to begin or how to get it all done. When I experience this, I feel tired, but also I don't feel like I can go to sleep. I'm having trouble sleeping, just like what we were talking about. This is a symptom of anxiety. Or I might be sleeping a lot, but then when I wake up, I'm not feeling rested. So, yeah, so you just have this like ongoing experience of feeling tired or feeling exhausted. So in dealing with burnout, I think the important thing is, first of all, just to know this is a common experience for people, and it's okay when you're feeling that way. It's really important not to judge ourselves too harshly and to give ourselves some grace when we're feeling some of these things. I think that there is this feeling in our society of always feeling perfect and feeling wonderful and feeling great all the time, but that's not really a normal human experience. So just recognizing that, yes, I'm feeling burned out right now, that's okay. Because even when we're taking really good care of ourselves, we might still experience some of these symptoms of burnout. And self-care is not about eliminating all of that, but it's about tending to those feelings. So when you're feeling some burnout or what you think might be burnout, here's just a few questions that you can ask yourself. What am I feeling? What are these feelings telling me? And what do they mean to me? And what actions should I take? And again, engaging in your self-care routines, engaging in your self-care habits and rituals will help with burnout, but sometimes, as we were saying before, you might need a different type of attention. So seeing a medical provider or a mental health specialist is something that I really support and think is important. And we're going to get into some ways that we can create some self-capacity for ourselves. We're going to revisit that from talking about it 2 weeks ago. And so let's start, before we get into that, with poll question number 3, please, Leandra. All right, thank you. So last time we talked about FACES as an acronym for when it comes to self-capacity. So if you can remember, which one of the following characteristics is not a part of FACES? Okay, we're getting some questions here, or some answers here. Green. Okay, we're still answering, I see. Okay, let's broadcast those results, Leandra, please. Yeah, so it looks like everybody chose the right one, crying. So flexible, adaptive. The C stands for coherent, energized, and stable. I do want to say, though, that crying is not a bad thing, and that's not why it's listed here as one of the characteristics that's not part of FACES, because sometimes crying is a very healthy thing. It's a way for us to express our emotions, to get in touch with our emotions, and it can feel really releasing and good. So I just want to make that clear. It's just not one part of this acronym that we're talking about. Okay, so we can take the poll question away, please. Thank you. So yeah, FACES. So when we were talking about self-capacity, we were talking about having enough space within ourselves where we can experience things that might be stressful, but can experience it in a way where it doesn't overwhelm us, where we can actually interact with it in a way that feels better for us, that feels healthier for us, and that feels more constructive for us. And we talked about the cup analogy, the size of the cup being our capacity to handle stressful situations. the amount of water that goes into the cup being the stress that we receive, and then that space between the water and the cup being that space where we can breathe and we can actually operate within this goal of spaces. And so the larger our cup, the more stress we can handle. The less water that goes in our cup represents the less impact that stress has on us. And then we have more open space where we can be flexible in our response. We can be adaptive to situations that might be not feel like they're in our control or something that we plan for. We're going to be more coherent in our decision-making and more clear in our decision-making, and we're going to feel more energized and more grounded in that process. Okay. We also talked a little bit about self-regulation, so I just want to revisit that. Self-regulation as a way to manage our emotions in relation to our behavior, taking a pause between feeling something and taking action, thinking things through, making plans, waiting patiently. And these are ways that we can respond to situations and to people that might be more difficult for us, more stressful. It's a way that we can manage our anger and some of our experiences around anxiety. It helps us to calm and relax ourselves, to handle our frustration. And we talked about a couple of things like practicing mindfulness and reframing activities. All right, so that was our review. We're going to start talking a little bit about some new content today. Sometimes when we're thinking about self-care, we think, where do I start? Where do I start with self-care? And one way that I like to start is just doing an assessment for myself about where I am, which we're going to talk about, and then putting a plan together. And we do this with our clients. We do needs assessments with our clients. We prioritize what those needs might be, and then we put together action steps and make a plan of how we'll work on those things with our clients. And I just love that, and I think that in my history of doing case management and some prevention, HIV prevention work, plans, assessments and plans can be really powerful and really helpful and add some structure for ourselves when we want to start making setting goals or making changes for our lives or developing a self-care process. So I have 5 different steps that I like to talk about when it comes to the self-care process. First of all, assessing where I am. Second of all, considering what I need. Thirdly, make a plan. Fourthly, check in on that plan. And number 5, adjust as needed. So in assessing where we are, there's some questions that we can ask ourselves. So again, what is happening right now? What am I experiencing? What's going on with me? What's happening around me? And how am I feeling? How am I feeling about all of that? How am I feeling in response to these situations? And how do I want to feel? How do I want to respond? And how do I want to be in those situations? Also, I want to mention that in the files handout section at the bottom of the platform here, we have a few tools that you can download as part of this process as well. There is a self-care worksheet, and there is I'm going to make sure I'm referring to, and there's a self-care assessment there as well. And so those tools give you a lot of things to start to think about in terms of what you're experiencing, maybe some of your current self-care practices, things you might want to consider and try. These are tools that I found from other sites that talk about self-care. So they're not specific to anything that I created. I don't like to create the wheel on things, but so I just pulled those in and gave credit to those organizations that created those materials. So those could be great ways to help you to start to explore self-care and assess where you are and start to work on the plan. Some of the other questions that I think are important to ask ourselves is where, and thinking about where you want to go or how you want to feel, how do I get there, so that you can start to put down the specific steps that you want to take. But then also asking yourself, do I believe that this is possible? Do I believe that I can put together a self-care plan? Do I believe I can engage in self-care? Do I believe that I can feel better or feel more healthy when it comes to handling stressful situations? And I do this with my team all the time. I always give them a confidence scale of 1 to 10 and ask them where they are on that. And it's really funny. They crack up whenever I ask it, and they know that I'm going to ask that. But I think that really helps us to check in with ourselves and give ourselves a particular point of reference about how possible we believe this can be in working on our self-care plans. So let's see. So the next step is considering what you need. So this could be like, what parts of me need tending? What parts can I identify for myself that I know that I'm challenged with, or I know that I'm struggling with, or that don't feel so good for me? What are those parts that need some attention and need some care? And then what does that tending actually look like? Like what kinds of things do I need to do to tend to that? So for me, sometimes, like, I will admit, like, getting ready for this training today, like, this is not my usual platform for how I do trainings. I like to be in person with people. I like to see the people that I'm talking with. I like to participate and get some immediate feedback from folks and participation. And so this platform is a little different because I can't see you all. I can't read my room very well. I don't know how some of my information might be landing with you all. And so I started to feel really nervous today and earlier before this training. And I just took a moment and said, I need to take care of that for myself. What is it that I need to do to take care of some of that nervous energy? So a couple of things that I did was I went outside for a little bit just to get some fresh air, which I will say in Colorado right now, our air quality is not that great because we have 4 different wildfires burning in the state, and all of that smoke and ash is coming down into the city. But today seems to be a clearer day than it has been. So, but I got outside today and got some fresh air. I also talked with one of my staff today who really just is a really positive person on our team and someone that I feel like I can just connect with, especially when I'm having a challenging time. So those are some things that I did. I just knew that I needed to connect outside, as well as I needed to connect with someone else that I really felt I could get some support from. So yeah, so I just wanted to share that as part of the what I need. And also as part of the what I need is is this expanded way of looking at things that we can do for our self-care. So we're going to take quite a bit of time with this slide and go through some of these different elements. This actually is the Healthy Mind Body Platter. It was created by Daniel Rock and David Siegel, and they modeled this structure based on the healthy eating plate that the USDA created back in 2012, and Michelle Obama was a big part of creating that, and which is all about just laying out the options and creating balance and how much you need from each one of those. So I really like these elements and these things to think about when we're considering what we need from self-care and some things that we need to do. And so I just want to spend some time going through them. I'm not going to go through them all in order. I'm going to start with 3 of them that I think are, in my experience about talking about self-care, end up being more of the sensitive areas to consider. it can be a little bit more frustrating for us, given some of our situations, as well as some of, I think, the societal norms that are that exist around these things. So, first of all, I do want to talk about sleep. And I think we've all heard that we're not getting enough sleep. The experts are saying we're not getting enough sleep. We're so busy. Our lives are so busy that we have little time for sleep. And we also have so much on our minds that when we do try to go to sleep, we can't. We have challenges around that. And sleep is really important because this is the time when our body and our mind can recharge. When we can just slow down and let our healing processes take over, where we can just get some rest and a break from the stuff that we're taking care of every day. I also like this. This is where, when we're sleeping, that's when all of our learning from the day is processed, where all of our memories are made, which I think are really important concepts. I always think this is a sensitive topic because there's not, I think there's a lot of different answers out there about how we can get more sleep or how we can make our sleep more higher quality. And, I think that those are all different ways to explore, but also just knowing that we have to find out, again, what works best for us. Because I think different things work for us. Like, I need to be a little warmer when I sleep. I need to have a really dark room when I sleep. And those are the things that give me more comfort. I need to, even if it's 90 degrees outside, I need to have a blanket on me. I need to feel that weight and that presence on me. So different people, though, want different things. Some people like a cooler room, or they like to sleep with a light on at night, or they don't like any blankets when it's warm. Whatever it is that makes your environment more comfortable for you to relax, to slow down, and ease into sleep. One time I did this training, and I had someone that got really upset, and they said they didn't need me to talk so much about sleep because they just sleep when they want to. And, yeah, great, that's part of your sleep pattern. Like, if you find different periods of time when you get sleep and that feels good for you, that's great. But we do know that some people struggle with that, and it might be harder for them. And again, I think that if you're finding that you're having a hard time with sleep, talking to a professional about it could be very helpful. The other thing the next one that I want to prioritize here is that I want to talk about this area of physical time, which is down on the left bottom corner. First of all, I just want to recognize that we all have different abilities that can support or limit our ability to engage in physical time, and it's important to honor those. So I like to talk more about movement and moving around more than exercise, and what can we do to bring more movement into our day, because we do know that movement and exercise and getting some physical activity will create those hormones, will increase the amount of the hormones such as dopamine, that makes us feel good. So I think that movement is really important, and if we can find ways that we can increase that within our day at a level or at a pace that works for us, I think that that's really important. And to, again, bring more movement. So again, what does that look like for you? If going to the gym 2 hours a day, 7 days a week works for you, then by all means do it. That would never work for me. That actually doesn't even sound fun at all to me. But if doing some stretches or some sitting exercises works for you, then that's great too. Taking a walk or, just doing some yoga, if that's something that works for you, whether that's in a sitting position or standing position or on the floor, whatever it is that you're into. Cycling. I do a lot of cycling. I do that a lot during the week and on the weekends. Since I live in Colorado, I'm up in the mountains doing hiking. And that's the way that I bring movement into my life. I do like to stretch a lot. I'm getting older, and I'm realizing how much stiffer I am. And so doing stretches during my workday has been really important to me as well. And the third one that I want to mention is nutrition. So eating well, and again, assessing that for yourself. And I always just like to consider, what does my body and my mind need to function in an optimal way? What foods energize me, and am I getting enough of those? What foods are good medicine that maintains a healthy body and mind? I also like to consider what foods makes us sluggish, and are we getting too much of those? Are we eating too much? Are we eating too little? Do we have an addiction to food that we might need to tend to? Are we balancing what we eat? Are we denying ourselves foods that we enjoy? All of these things are things to consider, and I think that we put so much judgment on eating, on what people are eating, how people are eating, when people are eating, and again, I think we need to be kinder to ourselves around that and give ourselves a little bit more grace. But just consider some of these questions that I posed about. I think the most important ones are, what foods give us energy and what foods make us sluggish, and go with that. Also, I don't want to deny myself foods that might be something that I enjoy. So I definitely, I love my donuts, so I make sure I get some of those in there. And I love my barbecue potato chips, so I make sure I get some of those into my diet as well, because I enjoy those and those make me feel good. I want to go back to talking about playtime. And play on here is really about bringing more fun into your day. What is fun for you? What do you like to do? What do you enjoy? Do you like to watch movies with friends? Do you like to play games with friends? Do you like to cook? Do you like to play music? What is it that brings fun into your time and in your day and brings a smile to your face, brings some laughter, and brings opportunities for you to spend time with people that you care about? That's what playtime is about. I want to go back to downtime. This is one of my favorite self-care efforts, downtime. Downtime really is about not doing anything, giving yourself some time when there's no plans, there's no tasks in front of you, you just let your mind wander, you're not thinking about anything in particular. This can be very recharging for your brain and your body. Just having some time in your day where you just aren't doing anything. I definitely try to fit that into my day because I just like that time where I don't have to focus on anything and I don't have to get anything done. I think we live in a society where we feel like we have to be productive all the time. But I don't think that that's really true. I think we can have some downtime, and that downtime is very healthy for us and makes us more productive when we do need to get some things done. The time in can be a time of reflection. And as we talked about, this can be a time where you tend to those spiritual needs, those emotional needs. Some people like to meditate. Some people like to pray. We talked about some mindfulness activities last time. Some people just take some time just to get to know themselves, to understand who they are and what their values are. Journaling can also be a way of experiencing some time in. Connect time is about spending time with people that we love and that we care about and people that are important to us. I think this is really important in so many ways. We talked last time about how COVID is making people feel isolated and people are not feeling like they're connecting as often. And we're definitely finding out how important connecting with other people are to our overall self-care and health. In this time, we're not seeing our coworkers daily. We're not seeing our friends. Our children are not engaging in their usual social circles. And I talked to some of my friends who are parents who are really seeing how that has affected their kids, especially over the summer. We talked about how relationships are definitely important to our self-care, and how being with people can lift our spirits. Having someone talk to about our lives can be healing. Our relationships can be part of our playtime, but we also sometimes need self-care so that we can engage in constructive ways with are in our relationships. So that's the balance about why self-care is important. And lastly, I want to just talk about focus time. So taking time to focus in on one thing without interruption generally is a nice luxury for some of us, but it can be a really healthy thing to do. There's lots of studies that show that multitasking is not good for us or not good for our brains. But that if we can focus on one thing and make a deeper connection around it, we're actually building our brain muscle. And so things like reading, where you're focusing on what you're reading, playing a musical instrument, or making art, these are activities that require focus and can make for a healthy brain. I play an instrument, I play the trumpet, and I can tell that in my week when I'm playing my trumpet, I can really feel the effects of that focused time, because all I can do is look at the music that's in front of me and play those notes, and it feels really good. So this is the Healthy Mind Body Platter. Again, in the files and handouts, you can download this, and it's a two-sided handout, and on the back, on the second page, there are some prompts that can give you a little bit more information about these different activities. You can also Google it, and there's a lot of information about this that can be helpful for you. Let's see. And so let's go to poll question number 4, please, Leandra. Yeah, I just want to hear from you all, which element of the Healthy Mind Body Platter do you connect with most? So there's no right or wrong answers to this. This is really just to see what you all feel is important for you. All right, let's broadcast the results. Oh, wow, this is great. So 52% of folks are talking about sleep. Yeah, sleep is so important and really healing, and it can be a big part of your self-care. Yeah, that's really great and interesting to see how everybody's connecting with that. People like downtime, 17% like downtime. So you're part of my tribe, I think. Physical time and focus time, those popped up, and then playtime as well. So great. Yeah, I'm glad that there are some things on this that you can connect with. And what I really encourage you to do is explore these things that you connect with more. Do more research, attend more trainings, read more resources to know a little bit more about how they can be helpful and beneficial to you. All right, we can take that one away, Leandra. Thank you. Okay, I want to spend some time talking about self-comfort and self-care. I have a few things on here that might be listed more as self-comfort activities. And what I would say is that self-comfort is definitely a part of self-care. And when we try to distinguish them, it's a little complicated to make those distinctions. And I talked a lot about self-care with people. I think that these are the things that people think of more readily and quickly when it comes to self-care. And again, these all are part of it. But what I would say is that self-comfort is about making ourselves feel good in the moment. And self-care is about putting attention to our greater and deeper needs and taking care of ourselves in a way that, again, impacts our health and well-being. And so self-care takes a little bit more time and effort, and it's not always as easy as maybe engaging in a self-care, a self-comfort activity. And the one thing I want to make aware of around self-comfort, it should be a part of your self-care activities, and it should be part of your self-care plan. But if, for example, you find yourself eating cupcakes every night and watching hours of your favorite shows, and you're doing this every night as a regular part of your routine, it may be important to consider how is that working for you. Are you maybe actually avoiding things by doing that? Are you avoiding other responsibilities? Are you avoiding work and relationships? Maybe, and sometimes you could be creating more stress for yourself if you're not bringing some balance around that. Yeah, I like, for me, I like one of the self-comfort things I like to do is I like to go shopping. But if my shopping trips, credit card receipts don't match my bank account, then that can feel a little bit more stressful to me. And so I just have to find where the balance is between the self-comfort activities and self-care, and really know when I'm engaging in self-comfort, what does that mean? Am I trying to avoid something? Because self-care actually engages us around those things that we might be trying to avoid. And also, I just want to talk a little bit about stress reduction, the key being reduction, not avoidance, but reduction, and reduction in terms of how that stress impacts us. And when we're trying to create space that helps us to reduce stress, that takes quite a bit of effort. We've talked about the self-capacity building and how that can help impact the impact of stress on ourselves. We talked about stress, self-regulation. Self-regulation can also reduce the impact of stress on us because we're managing our emotions and our behaviors differently. But when I talk about other ways that we can reduce stress, when I've talked about it with people that I've worked with, I get a lot of eye rolls, and people like to tune out around that because these things don't seem as interesting or as fun as other things we talk about with self-care, like self-comfort activities or some of the things we've talked about in the Healthy Mind Body Platter. So some of the things I like to talk about in terms of stress reduction is, for the first one is keeping current with your work. Keeping current with our work can actually reduce our stress. For example, if I find that I can create a list at the beginning of the day of things I need to do and stick to that list, then I feel like I've accomplished something, and that gives me more energy, and that gives me more energy for the next day. Even for me, if I need to answer all of my emails in a day, to make myself feel like I'm on top of things and that I can show up tomorrow without things hanging over my head, and not being worried about them, and that things are not piling up on me and that people start to get frustrated with me. And so I know that sometimes that can feel pretty impossible given how busy our schedules are, but what I think that it's really important to know is to ask for help when we need it, ask for help from our teammates and our supervisors when we need it. Knowing our limits is okay, and I really hope that you work in environments where you can be supported around identifying what your limits are. We're going to talk about that in our next session with supervisors, but being able to know those, communicate those, and have those honored can be really helpful. But I do know that it's really hard sometimes to feel like you can be on top of things when you have so much going on. And sometimes it's just about starting small, and that each step is an important action, and it can lead to getting a lot done. So even if you're not getting everything done, but you get a few things done that you feel like can really help you feel accomplished, that can go a lot for how you're feeling about tackling some of your next tasks that are on your work list. I also just like to talk about taking care of personal responsibilities that can also reduce stress. So keeping things organized, whether that's in your workspace or in your living environment, those can have a big impact on how you feel about things and how much energy you might have to be able to tackle some of the tasks that you have that are in front of you. Keeping a routine, and a routine in your home for yourself, for your family, for how you approach work, those things can really make a big impact as well. And I think number 3 on this list, honoring or operating by our values, knowing what your values are can be really important. And so taking assessment of what is important to you and identifying 2 or 3 things that you operate by and hold yourself to can bring a lot of clarity to how you operate. And your values might be different between like your work life and your home life. So you might have 2 different sets that you operate from, and you can find some commonalities too. One value that I have that's really important to me is to treat people with kindness, with compassion and empathy, and that works for me at home and at work. So I can treat people that I work with or that I come in contact with at work with friendliness and some patience and kindness, and that makes a big difference, as well as how I treat people in my life at home. Okay. The next one is making a plan. So plan in small time increments, set attainable goals, and know how and determining how well you will know that it's going. So maybe you're just making a self-care plan that's just for today. Maybe you're making a self-care plan that's just for this week. Sometimes doing it in small increments can not feel so much or so overwhelming, and may help you to be able to actually accomplish some of those things that are in your self-care plan, and not create like a space where you might feel like you're failing because you're not keeping up with it on a regular basis. Just asking yourself, what are the things I enjoy? What works for me? What is one thing that I can do now for myself? And then determining what results you want to see. Do I just want to see that I'm managing things at work a little better, that my relationships are improving, that I'm feeling more energy? What is it that you want to see as your outcome? And then check in with yourself to see how things might be going there. And if you're not seeing things that are working for you, it's okay to adjust that plan. Sometimes you're not seeing the results that you want to see. Maybe it's just doing an evaluation of maybe some of those activities that you set up for yourself, and maybe those aren't things you want to do at all or even right now. So putting together a new plan with some new activities might be more helpful for you. And not all plans work, and that's going to be okay. And not everything that we try will work, and you don't have to be perfect at this. That's not the point of self-care. It's about knowing what you need and giving that to yourself. And I just want to say, don't give up. If a plan didn't work, there's no shame in that not working again. And you're not a failure, and it just wasn't a plan that was for you. And so, adjust to what you know works for you. And maybe it's about going to those tried and true things first and making those part of your habits and routine, and then add new things when you feel that you're ready. Okay, so now I want to get into talking about barriers to self-care and what are some of the things that might make self-care impossible or might even feel impossible. These are just 3 that I hear most often, and I just like to put some attention to: the lack of time, the lack of money, and the lack of self-compassion. We're all really busy. We have our work, we have our home lives, we have families, we have children, we have housework, we have to cook dinner, we have dishes to clean, things to take care of, things that go wrong, car repairs. We're really busy from early morning until late at night. And so when we think, when do I have time for self-care? There is no time in my day for anything for me because I've got all of these responsibilities I have to take care of. And then there's also, self-care, considering that self-care costs money in some instances. I can't afford a gym membership. Massages are way out of my budget, and there's definitely no money in my bank account for a vacation. I have rent, a house payment, car payment, student loans. Maybe your household has lost some income through COVID, and you're just needing to make sure that those basic expenses are being met. Your car broke down, your refrigerator is not working, and those are pretty hefty price tags. So when do we have enough money for self-care? Well, what I would just say when it comes to time and money is just taking a moment, as we're talking about, and assessing and our needs and coming up with a plan. Like, if we are really busy and we have a lot going on, just trying to find those extra few moments in the day where it could just be for you. It could just be some of the downtime. It could be a quick nap. You could take a walk. You could eat something that gives you energy or that you enjoy. Just finding those few moments, even if it's one thing a day that's just for you, I think is really important. And I think that we could carve that in even into our busy days. Also, just considering how much time do I really need for self-care, and figuring out how you can meet that need. You know, there's a lot of ways that we can do self-care that doesn't cost money, and there's a lot of free opportunities around exercise, just, again, taking a walk or finding ways to move within your day. Those don't have to cost any money. Reading a book from the library or taking a nap or calling a friend. You know, there are a lot of things that we can do for self-care that doesn't cost money, and that can still give us energy and create capacity. I do want to talk a little bit about self-compassion, because I think that this is something that in my study and in talking to other people about, comes up really regularly. We don't think that we deserve good things. We don't think that we deserve to be cared for, and that is just not true. We do deserve to be good things, and we deserve to take care of ourselves. And so in our work, we share a lot of compassion, right? But we can bring some of that compassion back to ourselves. And 5 qualities of compassion that I think that are good for us, whether we're showing compassion to others or showing compassion to ourselves, are just being aware of what's going on for yourself, giving some attention to that, acknowledging it. It really will go really go far for yourself. We know that it works well for others. When we're validating someone else's experience, it really makes a difference to them. So why can't we do that for ourselves? Why can't we bring some awareness into ourselves, giving ourselves some acknowledgement and some understanding, and just letting ourselves know it's okay that I'm not feeling so good right now. And along with that, listening. Listen to ourselves. Take some moments just to let ourselves talk to ourselves and tell us what we need. What is my body telling me? What are my emotions telling me? Do I need rest? Do I need to talk to someone? Do I need to eat something right now? And patience, giving ourselves some grace, giving ourselves some space, not being so hard on ourselves. Again, not everything has to be perfect. We don't have to be perfect at everything, but maybe just giving ourselves a little bit of encouragement, of giving ourselves some praise and bragging on ourselves, even to ourselves when something happens that we can brag on ourselves around, telling ourselves that we are okay and that we can do this. And with that, again, is giving ourselves some warmth and some kindness. And I think it's, one of my things that's really important to me is that when right now I'm doing a lot of meetings with my team through Zoom, and it's really important to me to show up with a smile and a hello and to my team. And I can see what the result that has on them at the beginning of our meeting, and just asking them how they're doing. And that's just being kind. And I think it's okay for us to be able to to give ourselves a smile, to greet ourselves warmly, and to ask ourselves how we're doing. So at the bottom of this slide, you see selfcompassion.org. This is a great resource that if you're wanting to know more about self-compassion, I encourage you to look up. And some of the qualities of self-compassion that are listed there are being open to and moved by your own suffering, experiencing feelings of caring and kindness towards yourself, taking an understanding, non-judgmental attitude towards your own inadequacies and failures, and recognizing that your experience is part of a common human experience. What you're feeling and experiencing is not always unique to yourself, but there are others that are experiencing that as well. I think that that's important to keep in mind when we're on social media and it appears that everybody's doing so great and having these wonderful lives, but we don't really know what might be under that or behind that, and it might be an experience that we're having as well. So yeah, I recommend going to selfcompassion.org to explore this more if you're interested. And then addressing barriers to self-care, as we were taught, we mentioned 3 of them: lack of time, lack of money, lack of self-compassion. These are some things that you can do to impact those barriers. So allow yourself more self-compassion, assess what you can do, assess what you're currently doing, try out different things, be true to yourself, and ask for help when you need it. Okay, I'm going to skip to this slide because I think the slide before it feeds into this actually. So we're really at the end. We're at the end of the content, and I think we have some time here. And I'd like to hear from you. The question I'm posing is, what's worked for you? And that's again why I wish we were all in person, because I think this would work better. But if you feel comfortable and want to share something about what's worked for you around self-care or what's standing out for you in any of the information we've talked about today, I'd love to hear from you. And I think everybody else would too. We can learn about self-care from others. Peer support as a trauma-informed principle, so I think that that's really important for us to support each other. Shared experiences are powerful, and if someone's sharing something, we may consider something that we've not thought of. So, Leandra, I think you are going to allow folks to unmute themselves, and we would love to hear from you. If you can't unmute, if you aren't able to speak up and want to share that information in the chat, we'd love to hear that as well.
Sure, Robert. Let me do the commands now to give people the option to unmute. Okay, so I did activate self-muting mode. So if you do want to speak on the phone line, you just have to press *# on your keypad on your phone to speak up. And make sure that your phone is unmuted locally as well. Or you can add your thoughts in the chat box, as Robert mentioned.
Yeah, we would love to hear from you. Looks like some folks are typing in, so we'll wait for those to come in and we can share those. Does anybody want to? Oh, I see something here. So we see I enjoy caring it for and interacting with my pets. Oh goodness, yeah, pets are really great and fun for our self-care. They give us a lot of unconditional love and support, and they are excited when we come home, and they can be a lot of fun, and they can give us a lot more movement in our lives. So yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. You have someone that shared making an effort to do self-care like showering and sleeping and eating much better have helped with my self-care. Absolutely. Those basic things can make a huge difference. And I like that you mentioned showering here, because one of the things I've been talking with my team recently, we're all working from home, and those things like having a morning routine and taking a shower and actually getting ready for work, even if you're not having to go to work, actually can really set a new tone for your day. So we've been talking a lot about that with our team, so I appreciate you sharing that. Getting out of my mind into my body with exercise, lifting weights, hiking, and yoga has helped me so much. Yes. like I said, physical exercise or movement, it can increase those hormones like dopamine that really can help us to feel good. See music and fitness, walk around the inside of the office building and get the blood flowing and stretch. Yeah, sometimes you just got to get that blood flowing in our bodies and up to our brains. So, yeah, I love that too. And whatever we can do to get that going, great. You see my dog walk and play music. Love that. Yeah. Music, for me, is really powerful and important and lifts my spirit. So, yeah, I love being able to talk about music with folks. Social media plays a part in adding stress to normal everyday activities. Make sure not to use my phone apps after 7. That's a good habit and ritual that's working for you. Started reading again and finding that relaxing. Yay. Actually started sleeping much better. Yeah, so social media can add a lot of pressure. I know it does for me. I really struggle with measuring myself to other people, and so social media doesn't help me with that. But if I don't feel like I need to cut it off completely, but as Shara has shared, like setting some limits for ourselves, I think is really important. Love watching the sky or to be around water. Yeah, so relaxing and can be some really good downtime for us. Meal prepping, gratitude journal. That's another thing I like to talk about when I have more time is how gratitude exercises can make a difference in our attitudes and our emotional health, being able to identify those things that we're grateful for. But walking, jogging, listening to podcasts, there's some really great podcasts out there that I like to listen to. Music to reduce undesired quietness. PlayStation 4 games and a good movie, yes, and that can build a lot. PlayStation 4 games or video games in general, I think get a bad rap, but like anything in moderation can really lift our spirits and also increase some of our brain activity. Gardening, yeah, getting your hands in the earth, right, and seeing the beauty that can grow from the earth and what you've created. So these are all really great suggestions, and I really hope that folks sharing those can give others some ideas, some things to consider, think about when you're putting together your own self-care plan. These are all beautiful. Anyone else that wants to share, either verbally or through the chat? Also, yeah, I think Leandra is typing something. Okay. Oh, she's just giving you the instructions in the press pound, unmute your phone, star pound to unmute your phone if you want to talk. All right, I won't press this too hard on that, but just wanted to get some space around it. This is a quote that I have run into recently, or that's really stood out to me recently, and I just wanted to share it with you all. It's a quote by the late poet Mary Oliver, and if you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give into it. So this really stood out to me because we can find there might be a lot of things that we haven't encountered yet that can really be part of our self-care or our health or lifting our emotions and spirits, and just being open to those possibilities and opportunities, I think is really important. And when we do experience something that brings us joy, go into it, enjoy it, be a part of it, let it be a part of you. So I want to leave you with this quote in particular. And also just want to offer an opportunity to ask any questions. I know we were doing some sharing, but if you have some particular questions about any of the content, feel free to ask those. As Leandra put, you can do *# to unmute your phone if you want to ask those out loud, or if you want to put them in the chat, that would be great too. And again, as you're thinking maybe of some questions or posing them, I want to say again that there are quite a few handouts down in the files and handouts section of this platform if you want to download those and look at those. I think we're also going to be emailing those out with the slides as well. And you also have my email address here if you have additional questions for me that you want to ask outside of this training.
Thanks, Robert. I can definitely wrap us up since we're at the 4:31 Eastern mark. And I do want to be cognizant of everybody's time. This was a really great presentation. Thanks to everybody who added in their comments into the chat box. We didn't have a ton of time for questions, any time for questions, so feel free to reach out to Robert separately or me at NCSD if you have questions that you would like to ask. I'm sorry for not having time today, but this was really, really great, and we'll definitely try to make time for questions on the next webinar. And speaking of the next one, on the next slide I have just information about the webinars occurring on September 9th and September 30th, which are the final two webinars in this series. The one on September 9th being self-care and supervision. So again, talking about how to create a team environment where self-care is prioritized, still using the intersectional and trauma-informed lens. And then September 30th will be self-care and intersectionality. We have a little bit of a break between the webinars due to the STD Prevention Conference on September 14th through the 24th. But of course, we'll continue to send out registration links. We'll continue to send out the recordings and the slides, which will also be posted on the NCSD website. Tiffany has posted the registration link for Part 3 in the chat box. I'll also encourage you all to please fill out the evaluation for today's webinar to inform future webinars. You'll be automatically redirected there once the webinar ends, but Tiffany will also post or paste that link into the chat box as well. And as Robert mentioned, we'll definitely continue to send out the slides and the recording and those handouts that he referenced today. Those will be in the email that I'll send out to everybody who registered today, and those will also be on the NCSD website. So that is all my wrap-up comments. Robert, do you have anything else to wrap up?
No, I just want to thank everybody for participating today. It was really quite a pleasure to be able to talk with you all, and I hope that you found something in today's content that's helpful to you. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody, for joining today. We hope to see you again on September 9th, and take care. Have a good day.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.